Hi, I'm Debbie, and this is Book and BuJo, where I talk about all things books, bullet journals, and stationery. Today is my June TBRopoly. Let's see if the board will be nice to me 2 months in a row, or if it's going to be super mean again. But first, let's find out how I did in May. Do I have a punishment coming, or do I get a reward? My first roll, I had landed on Go, which was a spinner wheel, and I put a bunch of different books on a spinner wheel and I spun, and I got Last Stand of the Stone Last Stand of the Stone Fist, and that is by Michael R. Miller, and this is a novella that comes after Ascendant but before Unbound. And I have not started this one yet, but I should be starting it tomorrow, and it's under 200 pages, so I should easily have this finished by the end of the month, as I still have a little over a week left. My next roll was an even card, and it was to read a standalone, and for that I read Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday, and I have finished that one. My next roll was another even card, and that was to read a romance, and I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. And I did finish that. I very much enjoyed it. Roll number 4 was another even card, and that was to read a fantasy. And for that I read Origins of a Guildmaster by A.M. Eno. And this is a little prequel novella, and I believe it's a debut also for the author. And I loved it. I thought it was so much fun, and I can't wait to see what else they write. Roll number 5 was an odd card, and that was to read a book with a forest setting or trees on the cover. And for that I chose The Canopy Keepers by Veronica G. Henry, and this is the first book in the Scorched Earth series. And I have not started this one yet. I have about 75-80 pages left in The Prophet of Aedan, so as soon as I finish that one, I will read The Last Stand of the Stone Fist, and then I will read Canopy Keepers, and that should get me through to the end of the month, and I should have completed all of those books. Roll number 6 was an even card again, and that was to read a retelling, and I read Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, and I did complete that. Now, of course, that would have been the end of my TBR for May, but no, I got a double, and that last roll was an odd card, and that was to read a book with a dark cover. And I read Thud by Terry Pratchett, and this is the 34th book in the Discworld series, and I did complete that. So barring some strange, random, unforeseen circumstances, I will have finished my TBR by the end of the month. Very excited for that, especially since last month was so rough. So many books, way too many books, a lot of books. Now, of course, I read a whole lot more books in May for Readathons, but we'll get to that in my wrap-up. So stay tuned for that. Now, let's see how I'm gonna do in June. I will have completed my May TBR by the end of the month. I don't see why I wouldn't, because I really only have maybe 400-500 pages left to read, and I should be able to do that within a month. Shouldn't be too bad. I finished my TBR, so I get a reward. Skip next punishment. Well, that would be a good one. So I did get a reward, and that is to skip my next punishment. So if for some reason I don't finish all of my books in a month, my punishment is I have to read those books first before I can read any of my other books. So if it's an audiobook, I can still pick up another physical book, because I usually have 2 or 3 books going at one time, but I can't pick up another audiobook until I'm done with that one. Or if it's a physical book, I can read audiobooks or ebooks, but I can't pick up another physical book until that one is done, if that makes any sense. So with this, I would be able to just say, well, I didn't get to it, so I will just put it on some other TBR at some other point in time, and I wouldn't have to immediately read it that next month. So that would be very helpful. So how many books do I get to pick for TBRopoly? Let's find out. All right, we'll set the D20 aside. Hopefully I won't need that. And my D8, I will roll to see how many books I will be reading. 6. So I got 6 books again I had the same in May, so hopefully the board will be nice to me like it was in May, so we'll find out. All right, on to our first roll. All right, so we ended here last time, so that's where we'll begin. And let's go ahead and go with my first roll. Roll number 1. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, an even card. And that is to read a spooky book. Roll number 1 was an even card, and that was to read a spooky book. And so for this, I chose The Lost World, which is the second book in the Jurassic Park series by Michael Crichton. So I've read the first book, which was very entertaining, and actually the movie followed along fairly well with it overall. There are some differences, of course, so it'll be interesting to see how the second book stacks up. I have a feeling it will be pretty different. We'll see. Roll number 2 of 6. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is an odd card. A book that features games or trials. Roll number 2, so far so good. We got an odd card, and that is to read a book featuring games or trials. So it took me a minute to find one for this because I read Fourth Wing in May, which that totally would have worked for this, but alas, I did just read that. But then when I did a quick little search, it came up that Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare does feature games in it. So I'm going to take it because I did just get this from my library, and I should be getting the audiobook next week from my library as well. So I'm very excited to get into this one and see what it's all about because I don't really know a whole lot about this one. But the cover is very pretty. It's kind of fun, little Victorian vibes. If you have read it and it does not feature games or trials, please let me know down in the comments so I will have time to pick a different book for this one. Roll number 3 of 6. 12. Doubles. With only 6 rolls, that's not too bad, so hopefully we won't get any more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. A Buzzwordathon. Great. Roll number 3. I got the double. I don't think I've ever, maybe once or twice, I've actually gotten away with no doubles in a game, but it doesn't happen often. So of course this time I did just get my double, and that's okay, but I landed on Buzzwordathon, and the prompt for this month is repeated words. Now I would love to read tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, but the Hold Up My Library is way too long, and so I can't quite get it yet. So I kind of did a search, and I was looking up what other people had counted for this, and I feel like I'm cheating. I'm not, but I feel like I'm cheating because the doubles are the word the. So I feel like that's somewhat easy, but then again, out of all the books I was looking at, it was really hard to find double words. So I'm going to take it, and I'm going to be reading The Ship of the Dead, which is the 3rd book in the Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard series by Rick Riordan. And I'm very excited to continue reading through the Percy Jackson universe. I am getting really close to the end. I have, counting this one, there's 2 books left in the Magnus Chase series, I believe. And I think I have 2 more books in the Trials of Apollo, and then I have the 2 new ones that just came out with the Chalice of the Gods and the Sun and the Star, the one about Nico D'Angelo. And then I think there's one more I have on pre-order that comes out at the end of the year. Pretty sure there's another Rick Riordan book I put a pre-order on. I'm getting close to the end of this one. So The Ship of the Dead by Rick Riordan, Magnus Chase number 3 for Buzzwordathon. Repeated words. Roll 4 of now 7. 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A classic. Roll number 4, I landed on classics. And for that, I will be reading The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. And I think you could probably see the title a little easier there. It's kind of covered up. I really want to peel the sticker up, but when you start to peel it up, it takes some of the blue paint off from the cover. So I'm gonna try a little Gooby Gone or something. If you know like a really good way of taking these, like the packing tape kind of sticker off of there, let me know without peeling up all of the paint and decoration. I would love to find out. I know I could use a blow dryer, like get a little heat in there, and sometimes that helps. But yeah, if you know of a good trick to get rid of those, help a girl out and let me know down in the comments. So this is one of the books that I got from when my local community college library closed, and I was very excited. It's a very nice edition. It's very pretty, and it has a little bookmark. So we're going for The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, and this one is on my top 12 classics that I would like to read this year. It'll be nice to check another book off of that list as well. So this edition is kind of interesting. It does have a chronology of Wilkie Collins' life, so the author's life in here, which is interesting. When he was born, when he published each of his books. So it's kind of interesting. It doesn't have any kind of synopsis on it though, but I do know it's a classic Gothic, and it's got a Gothic horror, and it definitely has some spooky vibes to it as well. So I'm very excited to try it out, because I do know that one of my favorite types of classic books is Gothic horror.
Roll 5 of 7. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's an even card. And that is to read a memoir.
Roll number 5, I got an even card, and that was to read a memoir. And for this, I will be reading How I Became the Fittest Woman on Earth by Tia Claire Toomey. So I am not really a sports person. So with that said, I do enjoy CrossFit. I love watching CrossFit. I feel like it gives me such motivation to continue working out and trying some different exercises and things like that. I am not even near even beginning level of CrossFit in my fitness journey at this point. So out of all of the sports there are, I love watching CrossFit. And Tia Claire Toomey is 6-time winner now, and I am excited to read her memoir. She's a very interesting person. I feel like she has a really good head on her shoulders, and she's fairly positive and motivational, and I'm just interested to see what her book is like. All right, so far so good. No more doubles yet, so we'll see. Roll number 6.
4 of my 5 rolls so far have had a 5 in it. It's kind of weird, and I've actually rolled this combination twice so far. Interesting. Roll 6 of 7. 3. Oh, there we go. 1, 2, 3. Switch it up. Odd card. Water on the cover.
Odd card. And that is to read a book with water on the cover. Now, of course, The Ship of the Dead would have been perfect for this, but alas, I already picked that. And it was easier to find a book with water on the cover than it is to find a book with repeated words. So for this one, I chose A Spell Over Troubled Waters, which is the 3rd book in the Grimoires of a Middle-Aged Witch by Renee George, and I'm excited to continue with the series because it is so much fun. I guess you could call it a popcorn read, a good palate cleanser, a guilty pleasure, whatever you want to call it. They're super easy to read. They're hilarious. You got the snarky gnome Linda that just pops up out of nowhere sometimes, chucking rocks at people, and it's just so cute. I love this book series. It's so much fun.
All right, roll 7 of 7, our last roll. Ooh, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Another even card. I really want to land on that series in 24 and 2024. A fantasy romance.
And then the last roll, no more doubles. Thank you, TBRopoly, for being so nice to me again in June. And I got an even card, and that was to read a fantasy romance. For that, I will be reading Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, which is the second book in the Empyrean series or trilogy. And I actually really enjoyed the first book. I thought it was very interesting. And my library actually had the ones with the black sprayed edges. I was surprised. Kind of fancy. Oh, they may all come like that, I'm not sure. So I mainly picked up this series because the main character has EDS, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which can affect a whole lot of things. So it affects your flexibility, your joints, your muscles, your tissues. It can affect your digestion and just a whole lot of different things. So I have a couple of family members which both have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but they both have different kinds of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. One of them affects all of like the tendons and your joints and where all of those things meet, and the other family member has the one where basically you're uber flexible, but at some point everything in your body pretty much hurts all the time. It's pretty painful and they go through a lot. So I was excited to see how this book portrayed someone with EDS. I think they did a pretty good job. I suggested it to my family member that has this and suggested they read it because they also like fantasy, so I could get their take on it and see what they think. So once they read it, then I will update you and let you know. But I am going to continue with the series with Iron Flame because I just got this from the library, and I believe the audiobook I should also have. I think I'm next up in line, so I should have that in the next week or two. So I will definitely be able to get to this one in June. All right. Let's see, I have a couple stand-in books here for my TBR. So I have The Lost World by Michael Crichton for a spooky book. I have Sword Catchers for a book that features games or trials. I have my Kindle up here for The Ship of the Dead by Rick Riordan for a repeated words book for Buzzwordathon. I have The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins for a classic, and these are getting heavy. And I have How I Became the Fittest Woman on Earth by Tia Claire Toomey, and that is to read a memoir. Then I have A Spell Over Troubled Water, which is by Renee George for a book that features water on the cover, and then Iron to Flame by Rebecca Yarros for a fantasy romance book. But you know that's not all I'm reading in June. There's no way I can read just 7 books. That would be crazy. Although I am trying to read less. Read more intentional and a little bit slower and not just buzz through so many books. But I do have a few more books that I need to read. So let's talk about those. All right, book clubs. So I take part in the Backlist book club with Covers with Cassidy. I've not seen what the next group of books are that we will be reading, so that one is just kind of a blank space for now, and we'll figure that one out when Cassidy announces them. Then we have the Catch-Up Book Club with Beckett and the Books, and we are up to The Wisdom of Crowds, which is the 3rd book in the Age of Madness series by Joe Abercrombie. And then for the Game of Tomes, we are reading the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and that is the book for May and June. And I have previously read this book multiple times, so I am not going to reread it again for this one. I will give myself a pass on that one. Game of Tomes Book Club is with Carolyn Marie Reads. Next up is the BuJo Buddies Book Club with Jashi Curran, and we are reading Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear, and that is by Elizabeth Gilbert. And now, Readalongs. First up is Around the Disc in 800 with Literary Diversions, and we are up to books 35 and 36, and that is Wintersmith and Making Money. For the Kingfall Histories Readalong, we are reading Magefall, which is the 3rd book in the Kingfall History series, and this one is a chunky one. This one's over 1,000 pages, so we do have June and July to read this one. So hopefully everyone will be able to get to that one. And then the Wheel of Time read along with Got a Thing for Things. We are up to Crossroads of Twilight, which is the 10th book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. Next up, Readathons. Of course, we have the 2 year-long readathons that I always participate in, and that is Buzzwordathon. And the prompt is repeated words, and I'll be reading The Ship of the Dead by Rick Riordan, which is the 3rd book in the Magnus Chase series. And Year in Aeldia. For Ariel, she needs to care for the cure bloom in the greenhouse, and that is to read a book with a flower on the cover. And I'm totally going to count this. I looked at the covers of other editions of this book, and I feel like it's going to work. And I'm going to take it regardless. But I'm going to say Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare, because right there, that could totally be a flower. It's got 4 petals. I'm going to call it. I'm going to say that will work. And this lighting is not working for me here. But yes, right there, I'm going to say Swordcatcher. For Karasu, he has to read a book about the first reported companions, and that is to read a book that you've had for ages. And that one, I'm using a book I've already chosen before, because this is definitely, out of all the books on my TBR right for June, this is definitely the one I've had for the longest. I think I've had this one, well, I've had this one pretty much since it came out, so it's been a while, been a few years. And that is The Ship of the Dead by Rick Riordan. What other readathons am I taking part in? Well, I am definitely continuing with Breath of the Wildathon, and that is by Little Book Owl. And I will leave all of the links down below in case you would like to participate as well. And I'm on Team Rivali, and we all get different perks. So depending on what team you're on, you get a different perk. For Team Rivali, instead of drawing a Blood Moon card, which is one of the prompts for everyone, we can pick whatever book we want, which is kind of nice. But typically when I draw one of the Blood Moon cards, they usually fit fairly well, so I don't typically use that perk, but we'll see about this year. Now, if you've participated in previous Breath of the Wildathons, you can also get the glider perk and the horse perk, depending on how you did in the previous ones. Now, if you completed the glider perk, then you can read your books in any order. If you haven't, then you have to go in order of the map. So you have to start in the place 1 where everyone starts. You have to start there, and then you can't pick up your next book until you read that one. And you have to read the next book on the map to the next book and until the end. You can't skip around and read whatever you want. But if you have the glider perk, then you don't have to worry about that, and you can read whatever you want. And then there's also the horse perk. And this one, there's different levels of it. So if you've completed bonus challenges in previous readathons, then you can either start 2 or 4 days early. Now, I always complete all the bonus prompts because you know how extra I am. And I get to start 4 days early, so I can start the readathon on May 28th and go through June 30th. So I get 4 extra days, which also means I can pick books that I'm going to finish in May if I want to. So that's nice. So there's still books I need to finish in May, and I can count them towards the June readathon, which is cool. The first prompt that everyone needs to do, if you don't have the glider perk, this is the prompt that everyone would have to start with, and that is a Death Mountain. You need to have orange or red on the cover, and for this one I will be reading The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie, which is the 3rd book in the Age of Madness series. Now the next stop is Carrick Forest, and so each team has a different path that they take on the map. So everyone in Team Rivali takes the same path, and everyone in each of the other teams have a separate path that they get to take on the map. So for Team Rivali, the next step on the path is Carrick Forest, and that is to read a book with a 3-word title. So each team, it's different. So one team has a 1-word title, a 2-word title, a 3-word title, a 4-word title, because there's 4 teams. For Team Rivali, you have to have 3 words in the title. And I'll be reading Crossroads of Twilight by Robert Jordan, the 10th book in the Wheel of Time series. Thyflow Ruins is the next stop on the map, and that is to read a dark book. It has a dark cover. It could mean the plot of the book is dark. It could have dark characters. So you can kind of determine which direction you want to go with the word dark. I am going with Magefall by David Estes, the 3rd book in the Kingfall Histories series. And it does have a somewhat darkish cover, but there's definitely some dark characters and some dark themes in the book. Next up is Blood Moon. So you have to pick a Blood Moon card. And as you see here, I rolled a number 4, and the number 4th card is to read a book with dragons. Now, I already have 2 books on my TBR with dragons in them, because of course Wheel of Time has dragons in it, and then Magefall also has dragons in it. Since I already chose those ones, I can't choose them again because there's no doubling up. You can have 1 book per prompt. And so I chose Unbound by Michael R. Miller, and this is the 2nd book in the Songs of Chaos series. And then the last spot on the map that we all take, and each team lands on this at the end, and that is Divine Beat Va Meadow. And the prompt for this is you have to have an air or related word in the title. So air, breath, sky, wind, something like that, something that reminds you of air. And I chose The Stones of Earth and Air by V.M. Sang, and this is the first book in the Elemental Words series. And I don't really know much about it except that it has a great cover and it's fantasy. I think I got this during Stuff Your Kindle Day. I like the cover and it has air in the title. Now the bonus prompts. So there's 3 bonus prompts that we can do. The first bonus spot is Hebron North Summit. Read a book with the highest rating on your TBR. Now the highest rated book on my TBR I can't use for this prompt because I already used it for another prompt, which is The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie. So instead I went to the next highest, and that is The Ship of the Dead by Rick Riordan, 3rd book in the Magnus Chase series. The Wisdom of Crowds was a 4.6 rating, and The Ship of the Dead is 4.38. Actually, I had a lot of books on my TBR with over 4-star rating, which is pretty good. It should be a pretty good reading month. The next bonus stop is Loamy North Labyrinth, and that is to read in an entirely new spot. From what I understand is it's kind of like what they did in May the Force Read With You Readathon with Erik from Break Even Books, is every time you pick up the book you have to read it in a different spot. I wanted to pick something that was short, just in case. And that is the picture of Dorian Gray, and this is the graphic novel. So again, if you know how to get these stickers off safely without ruining the cover of the book, let me know. But this one is a comic and it should be fairly easy to get through. So I'm very excited to read this one, and this is one I will probably pick up in May as it is on one of my Readathon TBRs for May. And then the last bonus prompt is Redo Village, and that is to complete 1 or more Fang and Bone challenges. So these challenges are posted, I believe, weekly, so there's 4 different ones and they're posted each week in the Discord, and you can find that link in the announcement video from Little Book Owl, which I will leave her link down below. And in the Discord, she has a section that is just for the Fang and Bone challenges. So if you click on that each week, you'll be able to see what the challenge is, and then you have a week to complete that challenge. Sometimes it's posting a picture. Sometimes it's like posting your TBR in the Discord server for the Breath of the Wildathon, and sometimes there's other things like that. They're typically not reading challenges, so it's other things that you can do instead of just reading. And the last readathon that I am participating in is Library of Dragons, and that is by Books to Ashes, and I will leave all of her information linked down below as well in case you want to participate. So this is chapter 2, and you do need to do the chapters in order. So if you want to, for June, instead of doing chapter 2, you do chapter 1, and then you could do chapter 2 in July, and then so the side quest will be in September, the second side quest will be in September, and then chapter 3 will be in November. So you can do the side quests in any order at any time, but the chapters you do need to do in order. Chapter 1 was pretty much all about your character, and chapter 2 is all about your realm. So there are 7 different categories, and you do need to complete 1 prompt for each category. You can do all of the prompts if you want, except for 1 category. You can only pick 1. So you can have up to 19 prompts that you can complete if you wish. And she does say if you want to start in May and continue into July, that's fine too. This is all no pressure. There's no Readathon police coming after you. You can do them in any order and take as long as you want to do them, as long as they're complete before chapter 3 starts in November. This readathon is based on a role-playing game, where Breath of the Wildathon is based off of the video game The Legend of Zelda. And for Library of Dragons, you can double up, triple up, quadruple up on books. If you can find 1 book that fits all 19 prompts, then you can totally do that. And if not, then if you have 4 books that fit all 7 prompts, you can do that too. From Chapter 1, my character is half elf, half druid, and her element is earth. Her name is Anator, and that means protector of the forest. She is a gentle rider that loves the earth. Anator does live in a tepid environment, so it's not super hot, not super cold, but it's not necessarily all humid like a tropical environment. It's a little more foresty. And her dragon is a female, and her name is Quizzery, which means champion of the queen. She is a green dragon that is about medium size, so she's a little bit shorter than Anator, but is able to be ridden, which is nice. And she will still grow much larger. She does have 2 scars, one on the side of her eye and one on her back leg. And she is brave, loyal, trustworthy, and intelligent. So now we get to figure out the realm. First off, you get buildings. Are you going to have a castle? Are you going to have a school? Are you going to have barracks? So some of these choices will affect choices that you will make in future chapters, so you want to keep those in mind when you're picking your realm. Of course, I picked a book for every prompt just in case, to see if I can get it figured out. Now, when I first started picking the prompts, I forgot that you can choose the same book for multiple prompts, so I did choose some different books, but they're all part of my TBR for the most part, so I didn't really add too many new books, because I do want to kind of chill out a bit and read a little slower during the summer. For a castle, you need to read a book that features royalty, and for that I did go off my TBR for this one. There's a couple of books I probably could have put on here, but this one I know is short and should be an easy read, and that is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Ningbo. And I've heard a lot of good stuff about this one, and I'm kind of interested to see what I think about it. And it's only 119 pages, so should be a pretty quick and easy read. Next up, a school. Read a book with a school setting. And for that, I'll be reading The Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake, and this is the second book in the Atlas series. I'm about halfway through The Atlas Paradox already, but she did say that you could read some of the books in May, and it's a pretty chill readathon, so I'm gonna go ahead and count this one because I'm not sure if any of the other books I have already on my TBR count, so I'm gonna go with this one. I could possibly use Iron Flame, but I heard it's not as much of a focus on the school setting this time as it was in the first book. If that one does work for school setting, I'll use that. If not, Atlas Paradox. And lastly, for buildings, is the barracks. And this one features violence, war, fighting, or battles. And I do have a couple of books that will fit this category, but I picked The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie, which is the 3rd book in the Age of Madness series, and I'm pretty sure that one's going to have some fighting and battles and violence at least. If not, I have Crossroads of Twilight that might possibly work for that one as well, which is the Wheel of Time book, or Magefall by David Estes. That one would work as well because that one will definitely have battles in it. Next up, tavern. You can have a traditional tavern, you can have a cafe, or you can have a hideout. So this one is kind of fun. I would most definitely will prioritize the cafe and then the other two. For traditional, you need to read a popular or hyped book. And for that, I'll be reading Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, the 2nd book in the Imperium series. Okay, so that series is most definitely hyped up. Cafe reminds you of your favorite baked goods, drink, or a cafe that you enjoy. And for that, I will be reading Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is on one of my May Readathon TBRs. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to get to it in May, but I will try and get to it at least in June. And lastly, Hideout. The book needs to feature misfits, crime, hidden motives, or rebellion. And for this, I will add Crossroads of Twilight by Robert Jordan, the 10th book in the Wheel of Time series. I'm pretty sure there's going to be rebellion in there, probably some misfits, definitely some hidden motives. But also, The Wisdom of Crowds will fit, Magefall will probably fit. I'm sure Iron Flame would fit for this as well. Next up is a library or museum. So you can have a magical one, a hidden or secret one, or a personal library or museum. So a magical one, you have to read a book that features magic, which almost all of my books usually do. And for that, I'll be reading Swordcatchers by Cassandra Clare. And if for some reason this doesn't have magic, but I don't know why I wouldn't have magic in it, then I can of course choose Nightfall or Iron Flame or a lot of the other books, Ship of the Dead. There's a lot of them I could put on here. For a hidden or secret library or museum, you need to do a blind pick of your book. So I used my Blood Moon card pick from Breath of the Wildathon, and that was Unbound by Michael R. Miller, the second book in the Songs of Chaos series. And then for a personal library or museum, read a series you've been meaning to get to. And I have been trying to read this book for 2 months now, and I still have not started it. I'm hoping I can start it in May, but I don't think I'm going to get to it until June. And that is The Girl in the Moon by Mark Lawrence, the third book of the Book of the Ice series. I don't know why I'm not prioritizing it, but for some reason I just am not. So, June it is for sure. And if not, then I can also use the Ship of the Dead because that's one I have been putting off as well. Next up is monuments. Do you want to have a monument or a statue of some kind in your realm? The first one is an animal or dragon monument, and that is a book with my dragon's vibes. So I have an earth dragon, and as I already picked Unbound, and I already have a lot of dragon books. Well, actually, I have a lot of dragon books already. So, I mean, I could choose Crossroads of Twilight. I could choose Unbound. But I think I'm going to go with Magefall by David Estes, the third book in the Kingfall History series. Now, as I read the 3 different books with dragons in it, whichever one fits my dragon's vibes the most out of those 3, I will use that as the book that I write down. But this is the book I plan on reading for this prompt. Because there are multiple dragons in this book, and you get to hear from them through their writers. So I will definitely find one that fits Quizery's vibe. Or would you rather have a person as your monument? So maybe a statue of an honored military person or just an honored leader in your realm. And that is to read a book that was published over 10 years ago. And again, I have a lot of options I could go with this one. So any of the Terry Pratchett books from Discworld are all over 10 years old. But since I'm reading it anyway, I have decided to go with The Woman in White. Yeah, and since this was published in 1860, pretty sure that qualifies. Next up, a fountain as a monument, and you need to read a book with a cover that stands out to you. And for that I chose Wintersmith. I was looking at quite a few different editions of this one, and I think they are all just beautiful and go with the vibe of the book itself. It's the 3rd book in the Tiffany Aching series and the 35th book in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. Next up, temples. Do you want temples? Do you want a ruin? Do you want one that's maintained, or do you not want a temple? So this is another one that is kind of interesting. So I don't know if you can really do all 3. Maybe an area of your realm has no temples, another area maybe has some ruins of temples, and another area can be a well-maintained temple. That might work. So the first one is ruins. Your book needs to feature redemption, betrayal, something rebuilt, or something broken. And for that I chose The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie, the 3rd book in the Age of Madness series. Pretty sure that one and Crossroads of Twilight probably both fit this prompt pretty good. Next we have A Maintained Temple, and this is a book that features religion, gods, beliefs, or mythology. And for that I chose The Ship of the Dead by Rick Riordan, the 3rd book in the Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard series. It's right there in the title. Gods of Asgard. So this one definitely is mythology. And if you don't want a temple at all, then you need to read a book you know little or nothing about. And for that, I will be reading Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And I don't know much about it, except that the full title says Creative Living Beyond Fear. Lastly, we have merchants, market, shops, or a black market. So a market needs to feature joy, celebration, culture, something like that. And I will be reading How I Became the Fittest Woman on Earth by Tia Claire Toomey. And this one definitely has some joy and celebration in it, as she is a 5-time winner of CrossFit. Next up is shops. Read a recently acquired book, and this could be one you purchased, one you were gifted, one you got from the library. And for that I will be reading Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. And this is the 1st book in the Chronicles of the Castellane series. And then for Black Market, you need to steal a book off of someone else's TBR. And for that, I will be reading The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie, the third book in the Age of Madness series, which is part of the Catch-Up Book Club, so it's on a lot of people's TBRs coming up. Very last one that you can only choose one option from, and that is your homestead. Now, if you want to start small and then get bigger as the readathon continues throughout each different chapter, you can do that. So maybe you want to start with a humble homestead, so just something small, or maybe you want a substantial homestead or a lavish homestead. So originally I had picked that I wanted to go with a substantial homestead, but then when I found out that you can kind of upgrade as the chapters continue, I'm going to go ahead and just start out with a little humble homestead, which is kind of just a small little cabin, basically for 1 or 2 people. Me and my dragon. My dragon will have to be outside, but she's big enough and she's okay with being outside. And for this one, you need to do a reread. And for that, I will be reading The Exile by Ryan Cahill, which is the novella after Of Darkness and Light and before of War and Ruin in the Bound and the Broken series. This novella is so good. I'm excited to do a reread of it. And it's fairly short. It's under 200 pages, so it shouldn't be too bad. So that is my TBR for June. Let's see if I can hold this up. Luckily, a few of the books are on my Kindle, and there's a few that I don't have. I do have a couple placeholders in here, just so you can kind of get an idea of how many books I have on here. So I also have Wisdom of Crowds, Crossroads of Twilight, Wintersmith, and Making Money by Terry Pratchett that need to be on this stack, as well as a couple others. But here's at least a good start for the books that I will be reading in June. So thank you so much for joining me today, and please like, comment, and subscribe if you want it, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other videos from me. And if you made it this far in the video, you can of course leave a book stack emoji, or let's go ahead and leave some dragon emojis down there for all of the dragon prompts and books that I have on my TBR for June. And until next time, keep reading. Bye!